Welcome to The Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
On this week's episode of The Kindness Project, we talk about previous interviews, celebrity voices, and we have part one of our interview with Penny Power from E-Academy.
Welcome everyone to The Kindness Project. I'm joined by two blokes who have been discussing our future interviews. It's Chris and Russell Daines.
Russ, we've had some amazing interviews. I'll just carry on the conversation. We've had some amazing interviews in the past on The Kindness Project. Who's been your favourite previous interview?
I don't like any of them. My favourite's still to come.
Your favourite still to come?
No, I enjoyed...
I mean, after insulting Costa Coffee in last week's interview,
I enjoyed Ollie Smith.
Did you? I thought that was a good one, actually. Now, we know that Ollie Smith is a bit of a legend anyway.
Not a legend.
But yes, I agree that...
I think that's the one that affected me most.
In what way?
It made me think about...
Life. Life. Oh, life. Oh, sorry.
This is not becoming a thing on the podcast.
About succeeding with disabilities, so... Or adversity.
But we all succeed with an element of adversity, don't we? That's the idea of success. If it was a smooth ride, it'd be... So, yeah, but...
You just spoke to me.
Well, you know what I love about Ollie, and, you know, I might start the Ollie Smith fan club, because we do love him, is the fact that he's so open. Like, a lot of people sort of struggle with this sort of stuff, but Ollie's very much, look, I'm going through it, I'm having challenges, and I will... do good stuff despite of those challenges instead of using them as a reason that I can't. I love it. Absolutely love it. So yeah, really open, honest, and he's done some amazing things, particularly in sort of my professional world, which is financial planning and financial services, highlighting the fact that mental health is a really big issue. So well done, Ollie. We love you on the Kindness Project, mate. What was your favourite interview you got involved in?
I don't get to be involved in a lot. A lot of the ones I do get to be involved in are Americans. Just stating a fact, it is true that I get to be a lot.
Well, normally you're around when the time difference works. That's why. I don't know why. Well, what American interviewee did you really enjoy?
I remember the first one I got involved in donkeys years ago now, the butterfly one.
Yeah. I can't remember that lady's name, but I think it's... I thought it was Taha Wahal.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a really good one. I've got a few favourites. One that I loved doing was Ruth, who was the positive psychologist at the University of East London. Ruth Hughes. She's absolutely amazing. I literally I went to see her and spent about 3 hours just chatting to her.
Yeah.
It was absolutely brilliant. And then I'll tell you who else I've got a real soft spot for. Bernadette Russell. Bernadette Russell.
Bernadette's been on a few times.
Bernadette Russell, I really, really like. I mean, I've got no favourites. You're all my favourites. People who have been on the podcast, because, you know, it's a bit wrong having favourites, isn't it?
Am I your favourite?
You're all right. Russ...
Mediocre.
That's what I was going to say about you. Don't call my daughter mediocre. How dare you? She's average.
Pushing it a bit.
No, she's amazing. Clearly, I'm joking. But Bernadette Russell was one of the real inspiring sort of story. Really nice, really funny, really sweet, and just really consistently doing amazing stuff out in the world. I absolutely loved it. You know what was weird? Did I tell you the last time I saw Bernadette Russell?
No.
I saw her. And bear in mind that we've...
Oh, sorry, you did. You was jogging around London.
Well, prior to this, I was doing a bit more than jogging around London, Russ.
Was that when you were doing the marathon?
Prior to this, I'd never met Bernadette Russell in real life. We'd only communicated via Zoom. And I'd read her books and stuff like that. And I found myself doing the London Marathon last October and running past her house. And I knew that Bernadette for the London Marathon, she lives sort of that part of the part of London we don't talk about too often on the Kindness Project,
South of the river.
South London. But I found myself running through London past her house. And just imagine, you're Bernadette, you've never met this bloke before. He's a bit sweaty because he's been running a bit hard, and suddenly he just runs past your house going, Bernadette! It was a bit of a strange experience for her. Bernadette! Hello! It must have been.
If she wasn't in.
No, she was outside her house, Charlotte. She was in. She was in because I knocked for her and said, "Do you want to play out?" No, she was in, and it was really nice. Yeah, I still don't know to this day whether she knew it was me, but I'll assume she does. I'll assume she does. So we've done favourite guests again, completely off tangent for the start of the podcast, but as always, appreciated the chat. What I'd like to do is move on to the official question of the podcast, which is, what celebrity voice could you listen to all day? Now, my one is an old classic. I think most people think this guy's got an amazing voice. It's Joe Pasquale. Who's yours, Russ?
Joe Pasquale.
Joe
That's not what
Pasquale.
it says.
I don't know.
You can't listen to his voice. He's dead. Sorry, Russ.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
He was synthesised though, so I'm pretty sure we can get it on live.
I remember the day he died.
I genuinely don't know. I mean, Russ, that is as close to the line as we'll ever get on the Kindness Project. You saying your favourite voice of all time is Stephen Hawking. I don't know whether that's effective or not, Charlotte. Should we assume it is and move on very quickly?
I took it as Russ doesn't enjoy listening to the human voice.
Yeah, you like a synthesised voice,
I
Russ.
do.
What's your favourite human voice? Maggie Thatcher. Go on. Who do you like
She's
listening
dead
to?
and
Maggie?
You don't like a bit of Maggie? We don't talk about Maggie. No,
Yeah, we're not supposed to get political on the podcast.
No, we're not. We're not. We're talking about Maggie Thatcher's voice. Oh, I was, Russ. What were you talking about when you said you didn't mind a bit of Maggie? Were you talking about her voice?
The deep shame.
I quite like Bungling Boris as well.
Oh, he's funny. He's a riot. Not his politics, but
What you
listening to
can't-
him try and talk is...
What you can't see, listeners, is now that Russell has professed his love for Maggie Thatcher and saying he doesn't mind a bit of Maggie, he has gone bright red.
Don't, because our listeners up north are going to have it in for me now.
Well, I didn't say I liked a bit of Maggie, did I?
They're going to come and bring me with them.
Well, I don't think any of the listeners of the Kindness Project are that way inclined, Russ.
Also, we don't have that many UK listeners, if I'm going to be...
No, we have. We've got a few.
Yeah, we've got a fair few.
You've got a fair few.
When did that happen?
What do you mean? We've been doing this for 4 years now.
Yeah, but I thought a lot of our listeners were like external.
Yeah, well, they're external to this room, I suppose.
So, Russell likes Stephen Hawking and Maggie Thatcher. Who are you keen on?
Don't know.
Well, come on, you must have a voice that you really like.
Not my own. Anyone but me.
Okay, anyone but you. My one is Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry's got an amazing voice.
I'll tell you who has got an amazing voice, David Attenborough.
Yes. Attenborough.
Brian Cox.
What Brian Cox are you talking about? Are you talking about the Scottish actor or the Northern scientist?
And the other one,
The scientist.
Okay.
the other
He's
great,
got quite a chilled voice, actually.
the other great voice on the other side, Brian Blessed.
Blessed. I once went to an event with Brian Blessed, right? It was like one of these after dinner speech things, and he was booked in to do 45 minutes. 1 hour 50 minutes later, he's still talking about the fact that he's got loads of animals in his house and stuff like that. And then literally about every 7 minutes, he thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to chuck him a catchphrase. So he's just stood up and went, "Go on into line!" And that was it. It was very weird. Now, you don't know, Charlotte, what that means, do you? Have you ever seen... Do you know what that means, Russ?
No, vaguely.
Have you ever seen a film called Flash Gordon?
No.
Yeah.
Well, Brian Blessed is a British actor who's in Flash Gordon, and that's
Good for
his.
him.
And on that note, can you tell everybody where they can
Oh.
write in and
Yeah. On Twitter, we're at All of Kindness. On Facebook, if you type the Kindness Project into the search bar, we should come up top, and if we don't, we're going to have a word with Facebook management. If you type the Kindness Project podcast into Google, we should be the first one that comes up. If not, we're going to have to talk to Google management. If you type
we're talking a lot to a management. How are we going to get through to Google management?
I'll add all this. To
Hi, Larry Page, sort us out. Russ, email Google management. Who else we need? What other management? Facebook management. Zook, email Zook. Tell him we're not getting the exposure we need.
If you type www.thekindnessproject.co.uk, we won't have to bother with Facebook, with Google management, because we will immediately come up unless you have typed it wrong, and then you will have to have a word with Google management.
Well, I'm sorry, I meant a cupcake.
High professionalism.
What you have to do is talk to our website management, which is Russ.
Yeah.
And I've got to be honest, he's probably a bit easier to get in touch with than Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh yeah, if you want to get in touch with Russ, complain about not coming up, you want to talk to Kindness Project Management, you just type holler@thekindnessproject.co.uk.
And that email will get straight through to Russ.
You say holler to Russ, and you tell him there's a problem, and you need to sort it out with Kindness Project Management.
And Russell ignore it.
If what Russell has said has been deeply offensive to you on any level, you can break his windows, and his full address is no, there's not even go there. On that note, let's end there and move on to the next part of the show, which clearly, Russ, you're not going to say anything offensive on because you've already done that.
Too late.
And it is
Kindness news.
Kindness news.
Oh, what was that?
Charlotte, while I eat a cupcake, a very tasty cupcake, we are going to tell you a little bit of news, Charlotte. Go on.
Sure, I can do that. Holocaust survivors reunite in Florida after a labor camp friendship was broken 80 years ago. Those who say there's no such thing as destiny need to meet Jack Waxel and Sam Ron, victims who met during the Holocaust and who met again 79 years later in South Florida. Having endured slave labor shoulder to shoulder in the Pyongyang. I'm not laughing at the story. You are making a right mess eating that cupcake.
I've just dropped a bit of my cupcake.
The dog's gonna eat it, it's
Now,
fine.
this is an insult to I'm so sorry, Schmel and Ron. So Ron and Jack. Sam and Jack. Jack and Sam, I'm so sorry to make a mockery of your news story whilst eating a cupcake. Charlotte's going to start again, and we're going to do it justice this time, Charlotte. Whilst I just pick my cupcake off the floor.
No, leave it, the dog. Oh, unless you dropped icing and then the dog can't have that. Oh!
Crack on.
Holocaust survivors reunite in Florida after a labor camp friendship was broken 80 years ago. Those who say there's no such thing as destiny need to meet Jack Waxel and Sam Ron, victims who met during the Holocaust and who met again 79 years later in South Florida. Having endured slave labor shoulder to shoulder in the Pyongyang labor camp in Poland, the two were separated after Waxel escaped into the forest and Ron was moved to a different camp that was ultimately liberated. Neither knew the other had survived until Waxel attended a United States Holocaust Memorial Museum South Florida dinner last Sunday and found his old camp comrade to be the guest speaker. Introduced by his former name of Shmuel Rakowski, Waxel felt as if he was seeing a fraternal brother. He jumped off the seat and came running over to my seat and says, "You're my brother." I was very emotional. I'm normally not a very emotional guy, Ron explained. Just teenagers at the time of their imprisonment, the two managed to both immigrate to the United States, specifically to Ohio, where they both lived for 40 years unaware of each other's existence before eventually moving to the south. We were pushing coal to the oven to make heat to make power, and Jack said he worked at the same place. Ron said of their time in the camp, hard work, bad conditions, cold hunger, hundreds of people died. It wasn't uncommon to wake up in the morning and find the person next to you cold. Despite living 40 miles apart, the two men are determined to keep the survivors' flames burning and fill in the massive gaps of years with life stories. Ron occasionally makes appearances at schools to teach young people about his experiences. I try to teach them not to hate and to have a lot of hope and believe in yourself. This is what I did. This is how I survived because I believe in myself, Ron said. Ari Odzer, reporting for NBC, says succinctly of the pair that they revenged themselves against Adolf Hitler by living long, successful lives and having children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, you look at a story like that, and the best way that they've shown that hatred that the Nazis had was just such a sort of negative thing, was to just ignore what they did and just be successful. There's a really
I wouldn't say they ignored it. I'd say they lived through it.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly they lived through it. Come out the other end and, you know, mentally cope with that and be able to go on to live successful lives.
They lived through what they remembered.
Yeah. And there's a really good book. Certainly, I'd recommend it to my listeners, and I'd definitely recommend it to you too, called Man's Search for Meaning by a guy called Viktor Frankl. And he watched his wife die in Auschwitz. Came out and he was trying to make sense of the world through this prism of how can the world make sense when I've gone through this experience. And, you know, 50% of the book is talking about his experiences in the camps. And then it talks about his experience outside as a psychologist and psychotherapist and what he learned to cope with from that experience. So certainly definitely worth. Man's Search for Meaning is definitely worth giving a read to. And on that note, we're going to move on to the interview. The interview this week is with Penny Power. Penny's an amazing business lady. She runs businesses with her husband too, and they effectively set up the first social network before business social network. So before LinkedIn ever existed, Penny and her husband set up a business called Ecademy, which effectively was social networking for business people way before LinkedIn. We talk a little bit about that. We also talk quite a lot with Penny about why one of her values in business we share, which is kindness. So I hope you really enjoy the first part of the interview with Penny. Penny, thank you so much for joining us on the Kindness Project. How are you today?
I'm very happy. I'm very excited to be here. Lovely to be talking about kindness the world needs.
Yeah, that's a great start. I'm very happy. I don't think we've ever had a guest that started with "I'm very happy" before. Normally it's "I'm good." Why are you so happy today?
Well, I mean, to start with, I believe being happy is a very important value.
Yeah.
And it's a state of mind, isn't it? So
it's a choice, isn't it?
It is a choice, although, you know, there's no doubt about it. There's some unhappy things go on and I've had my fair share, but yeah, I think at any moment of time, I like to be a happy person. It's certainly much nicer for the person at the end of the podcast and you, who I'm talking to know that I'm happy. Doesn't mean to say I'm not without my shit in life sometimes.
Yeah, well, look, this is the thing. Life does come with challenges, but I think how important to you is. I mean, I suppose, you know, I don't want to go off topic too early, but how important to you is gratitude? Do you think gratitude's important in your happiness?
Oh my goodness, yeah, it's fundamental, isn't it? I mean, from a very little girl, always being able to count my blessings was very important. Yeah, I mean, I do believe managing your mental fitness is critical, and I wouldn't delegate that to anyone else. I really find it fascinating that people point fingers at people for saying I'm mentally ill or mentally unhealthy because of X, Y, Z. Starts with ourselves, isn't it? Same
Yeah,
as
you
our
got to look in the mirror, haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
So as we had a quick conversation before the podcast, we are quite a broad church at the Kindness Project. We our church just includes people who want to listen to amazing stories of people doing great stuff in the world. So some of our audience may know you, some of them won't, but just tell us a little bit about you.
What shall I tell them? Where shall I start? So I'm 57. No, I'm not. I keep saying that. A week ago, I was 58. So I'm 58, born in 1964. I'm a mother of 3 children who are all adult working entrepreneurs, married for 32 years, which is rather lovely, to Thomas. And I live in the south of England. In the countryside, so I'm looking out into forests at the moment. Nice. And I suppose what I'm known for from an identity point of view, rather than just who I am, for starting the first social network in the world, which some people go, nah, how could you make that claim? But it was in 1998. You can look at Ecademy online. That's like Academy, but with an E. And we started in 1998 for business owners to be friends with one another. So that's what I sort of am known for. But who I am is very much someone that's driven by people, making sure they know they matter, spreading a bit of love in business, and the power of community in creating a sense of belonging for people.
Community is so important, though, isn't it? You know what? As a business owner myself, and I say this quite a lot, it can be a lonely place, can't it?
Oh God, desperately. Yeah. In fact, in a poll that I conducted, it was actually in 2017. I was just looking back on it because I was writing about loneliness again, economic loneliness, business, commercial loneliness. 83% of business owners said they were lonely, and that was on Facebook. But I asked the same question on LinkedIn a few months ago, and I think it was 67% said it on LinkedIn. So I don't know whether they're not quite as honest on LinkedIn as they are on Facebook about their emotional state. But business loneliness is huge. It's completely different to loneliness at home. I've experienced loneliness when I first became a mummy, even though I was surrounded by my gorgeous baby, and I experienced loneliness stepping out of the business world and going into that place where I no longer had any identity, really. I've experienced massive loneliness as a child, and I've experienced business loneliness, and they're all very different, but they all come down to, do I have any significance to anyone else? Well, do I matter? Do I matter? Does anybody notice me? Am I being heard? And in business, when you feel that way, it has a huge impact on your output, your economic output, your self-esteem, your self-worth, how you value yourself in the business world, your courage, your resilience. Yeah, it's very important, but it's epidemic. Even though we're more connected than we ever have been in history, we are more lonely.
Well, we're certainly more connected, but I suppose the challenge might be how deep is that connection in today's world, isn't it? Sometimes it feels superficial and shallow, and I think we need to do more about deepening those connections potentially. But
and how honest is the connection with you? How honest are you being with yourself? Well, and I think we all have that our identity, but then we have our truth, and it's whether we close the gap between.
Well, I suppose one of the things that I was going to say, and that comes across in what I've seen you do, is just that authenticity. That element of turning around and going, "Look, I'm struggling. I've struggled. Some days are good. Some, I've had pain. I've had loneliness." I know you've written a book called Business is Personal. Help me understand what that means to you.
Well, I know not all of your listeners are business people, so I'm going to try. I know we both want to keep it fairly general, but if I talk about it in a working environment, I've always been more driven by emotional intelligence. I've always been more driven by the energy someone has when I connect with them. And I think all of us vary in our ability to feel that energy. Some of us are more resilient to people's energies. So, and I always wanted to be in some form of caring profession. From the age of 12, I wanted to be a physiotherapist working with cerebral palsy children. So finding myself in business at 19 and then ending up making a business career, whatever drives you inside never really leaves you.
Yeah.
And so I was never, ever going to become someone driven purely by transactions. And I'm not saying that I'm not driven by some success in my financial life, because that certainly helps me to give a better life to my family and security going in the future. Also helps me needing other people to support me. I remember someone saying the world doesn't need another poor person, and that's very true. So a lot of caring people actually can be financially destitute, and the world doesn't need that. So I think it's about a balance. So business, going into business, I suppose my overall drivers are still in that ilk. That's what makes my heart tick. Yeah.
So it's about helping people, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, there's helping and then there's rescuing, and I don't want to rescue. I think the worst thing to do for someone is to rescue them, because you disempower them. So I am very driven to empower people and help them find their, true talent and their true path in their business life. But business is personal. That phrase, and the reason I wrote my book is because somebody said to me once in business, and they were an investor in a business that I had, Penny, I don't need to like you. It's business. It's not personal. And I thought that's just such a revolting way.
Yeah,
but actually,
100%.
Going through the 80s and 90s in business, that was the attitude. You had, if you look online, if you watch The Apprentice, on the UK TV, if you watch, what's it called, Shark Tank, I think in America it's called, it's all about an aggression and a rudeness to people. And even if you watch Dragon's Den, I just, I can't watch it actually, because it makes my heart bleed when I see these very courageous people come in and get very little credit. Even if they don't get an investment, they don't leave them with a self-esteem and I can do attitude. So to me, we have to get rid of this sort of business isn't personal attitude and realize it's wholly personal. And also, we all want companies. I've just had a problem with a company in London double billing me on a hotel bill. Went through on my Amex bill, £365, bloody annoying. And you try and get somebody to empathise with the fact that you don't want to have to pay your Amex bill at the end of the month with 2 lots of payments on it. They don't care, because everybody hides behind a telephone or a computer keyboard, and they don't put the humanity into the fact they're talking to a person and the life.
But I suppose the interesting thing, sort of, so my sort of day job, so to speak, is run a financial planning business. In my head, and I suppose it's the way that it's the way that I choose to run my business. Having deeper personal relationships is fundamental in our business. It's what we do. Why wouldn't that be perceived as a particularly good thing, do you think?
I think it is changing. I think a lot of it's down to role models that you have, and whether they're the sort of people you want to be like, and or whether you just follow them because some form of misdirected admiration in them. But you're right. But I think it is changing, because I don't think let's take things apart a little bit here. I'm 57, and my parents were from what's called the silent generation. So that generation were the children of the greatest generation, and the greatest generation were the people who fought and definitely observed and witnessed and experienced 2 world wars. So they made massive sacrifices. If I look at my mum's mother, 4 of her 7 siblings never married, because they didn't have anybody to marry. So my father, I remember saying to me that when he was 12 and he was evacuated in the war, that he got evacuated out to this farmhouse that was converted into a boarding school for boys. And they were basically told, never complain, we don't want your tears, you've got to rebuild this country because you owe your forefathers that.
Gotcha.
right? And don't complain, and therefore don't bring emotion in. So there's been a generation of people going into business to build where they've locked their emotions down. And I can now say this because my father's now passed away. I was always careful to say this, and because he did follow my career and watch my podcasts and things. But, you know, my dad and to a certain extent, my mum were not able to show emotion. And so what sort of leaders in business would they have been?
Yeah.
So now I think I'm the channel for my children between my parents, and we all are. And it's up to us to say, well, that's how my father did it, and therefore that's how I'm going to do it. Or actually, life can be a little bit different. So I think emotion is coming back into leadership, and therefore it will change the cultures of organizations.
And I think you're right. I think it depends on how you define success. You know, it's that definition of, do we define success as just more money in the bank, or do we define it as a healthy, rounded, holistic life that includes happiness and the chance to just be more emotionally open?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But we do create, when I do my talks, I do talk about how I lost myself for about 6 years when I went into financial scarcity and fear. And, we just went through some serious hell. But yeah, I had this identity as a global entrepreneur that had built this huge business. That was my identity, but that wasn't my reality. But I was trying to maintain the identity of that. Yeah. And so many of us in this day and age, especially seeing everybody online, think, well, that's what an entrepreneur should be. And therefore, that's how I should behave. I should behave rich. I've known people hire a Ferrari for the day, borrow their father's house for the day,
it's all built on sand though, isn't it?
And then stand and say, come on my training course, I can teach you how to be rich like me.
Yeah.
And it's such BS.
But this is the big thing. It's that gap. I think you've closed that gap. Like that authenticity compared to the reality. I think, you're right. In today's world, there are always going to be people who, take, in my opinion, poor advice, fake it till you make it, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I hate it. As opposed to turning around and going, sort of when I look at my business, we're 11 years in now, pretty well established, loving what we do, loving the value add. The first 2.5 years, I think I may have wanted to give up about 10 or 11 times. It was just, it was a tough journey. And I think if we're not honest with people about that journey, then they're going to go in with different expectations, aren't they?
It is. I mean, we're all climbing a mountain. I was trying to think of a metaphor when I was listening to you, but I was thinking, if I've got to climb a mountain and the first thing I need to do is go on a bit of a training course, then learn how to use clampons, and then start that first base camp, get to the base camp. If I'm acting like I'm already on the top of the mountain, I'm just not going to be prepared for it.
Yeah, aim for it, but be
be realistic with yourself.
Understand it's a journey.
Yeah, so also it was actually something I was just reading about again, which I wrote about this back in 2017. I was listening to Claudia Hammond on a Radio 4 chat program, and she was talking to some professors on dopamine, about dopamine, the production of the reward center of the brain. And basically they did this little experiment, which is quite interesting. So this professor called somebody from out in the audience and said to this person, I'm going to give you £10. And she said, why? And she said, I'm just going to give you £10. And she said, fine. And they monitored the dopamine chemicals somehow. So she was very happy, got £10. And he said, I'm actually going to give you 20. And she went, oh, I'm very happy, I've got £20. And then he said, in fact, I'm going to give you 50 because I like you. So 50. So she went from nothing to £50. And then he said, actually, I'll take back 30. Here's 20. Right. So she was £20 up, but the expectation had grown to £50.
Yeah, loss aversion.
And so it's really interesting that if you try and pretend to be someone that you're not, you're actually creating a gap in any success.
Expectation.
Expectation, you never meet it. So the gap is huge. So you can never get that dopamine rush of I am doing well.
That was really good, Charlotte, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing. Glad you enjoyed it. And who's going to do a little jingle at the end?
Kindness. Nope, wrong one. Have to go through my roll.
Not kindness news.
Wrong one.
Tis the end.
Yeah. I gotta go through my roll. Tis the end of another podcast, but the end is never truly the end. The end is always the beginning of something entirely new.
Okay, and last week's podcast question was, if you were a circus act, what would you be? Mike Christie said juggler. The amount of stuff I've had in the past 4 years, managed to keep it all going and look quite calm while doing it. Steve Dan would be the bearded woman. With my man boobs, I'd almost be there. Claire Foster Clearo, at the moment, I feel like Dumbo. Craig Kavanagh said the fed up lion. Gillian Bird said the clown. Justin Gaffney said the ringmaster. Mark Bartley said the strong man. Brian Hill said the current circus is the Houses of Parliament. Again, getting a bit political for us at the Kindness Project. And that is it, my friends. That is the end of another show. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you next time on the Kindness Project.
Bye.
Bye.